Welcome to the January meeting of the East Lampeter Sewer Authority. And today we have present, starting on my right, Tara Hitchens, Brent Stolzfus, Todd Stump, myself, Rick Robinson, Vinny Patel, Fred Clark, member there. He's Zooming with us. We have Roush Hutchison, Charlie Thomas, Brandon Hollinger, Humble, sorry. Scott Shear and Matt Seachy here. Fred, you can hear us, right? Assuming that was a yes, Sarah.
Was that a yes, Fred?
Yes, I'm good. I playing with the mute button. We're good.
Okay. Again, welcome, and I invite you to join us in our pledge to the American flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, next on the agenda is the reorganization for the new year. Any suggestions? Anybody want? This is. But would anyone like my position?
I think you're doing a great job, Rick. Good job.
Does anybody else want any kind of change in their roles? Okay, for a motion to approve, or do you want us to do the accounting and the engineering also right now all as one? Can we do that all as one?
I suggest that you do the authority members roles first, and then you can do all the other ones together if you like.
I'll make a motion that the sewer authority board stays the same.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Engineering firm, HRG. Any other suggestions? Looking for a motion to approve HRG as our engineering firm.
I'll make a motion that we approve HRG as our engineer.
A motion and a second from Fred. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
Accounting firm, Weinhold Nichols.
That was a while ago. It's
Yeah, now it's
Irvine. We had that on the agenda a little bit later, but that's fine. You can do it now. That's Irvine and Company. It's the firm that the township and the ICDA are both using. So it would be efficient if they would also do the authority.
Motion that we retain Irvine and Company as our accountant.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Well moved.
Solicitor.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
Also make a motion that we retain Nicholas and Hohenadel as our town, or as our solicitor for the sewer authority.
Second.
Got a motion and a second for Nicholas and Hohendale. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Okay, we've had the minutes for a couple weeks, I think now. Unless there's any additions or corrections, you're going to stand written. Treasurer's report, sanitary sewer.
Rick, we have checks that need paid in the amount of $3,493.34. And as of the end of December, we have a checking account balance of $10,397.35.
Any requisitions?
Yes, we have one requisition today. Requisition number 03-612. This is payable to Garden Pot Electric Incorporated for the Falcon Run Pump Station improvement electrical construction in the amount of $31,627.69.
We look for a motion to pay the bills and requisitions for the sanitary sewer.
I'll make a motion to pay the bills. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Stormwater.
We have checks that need paid for the stormwater that total $8,084.42. And we have a checking account balance of $260,446.66.
Motion to pay the bills for the stormwater.
I'll make that motion. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Old business under sanitary sewer. Here to listen to Mr. Scott Shearer today, again.
It does have a.
He should be good to go.
All right, well, let's see, so good news is, through this whole handout, it looks kind of thick, a little daunting, we're gonna skip a lot of it. So last time, I guess I was here in December, I was given the green light to put out an RFP for a bank loan of approximately about $5 million, so we did that today. Got results back earlier this week, and I do want to thank Kevin, here, he spent a lot of time kind of helping us get information that the banks were requesting. Kevin was very quick on responding, so we really appreciated his help on that to kind of getting all these questions answered by the bank. So very much appreciated, and the banks appreciated it as well. And it just looks good for the authority in the township as well that we got back so quickly and everything else. So why don't we just kind of skip the first couple pages and why don't we go right to the meat of it? Go to page 5. Page 5 is a summary of the response that we received. So we got a dozen different responses. Some of those banks put in kind of multiple offers. So we got 12 different banks, which was very, very good. I don't know if there's a clear winner because there's always a slight nuance with each proposal, but M&T submitted a proposal at a 3.78% indicative rate, and that's one of the key words, indicative. It's not locked in yet. They have a bank fee of $2,500, but the other good thing is it is pre-payable at any point in time. So if you want to pay it off with a fixed rate bond issue later down the road, or whatever, refinance it 2 years later or next year if rates go down, you can do that. No problem. But the key thing with their proposal at the moment, it's an indicative rate. I'll get back to that, what that means and what we can do to maybe mitigate that a little bit. Then Webster Bank, I think probably submitted the next one, which was a 3.88%. They had a $5,000 bank fee. Their prepayment is not quite as favorable. It's not good. It's not quite as good as M&T's. It's a little bit better than a bond issue. Because remember, most bond issues have a 5-year call feature. This would kind of be like a four-year call feature, and they don't have any other restrictions. So that 3.88 for Webster, that is locked in. So they will be able to hold that rate. And then you see the other proposals that we received from the various banks. But again, I think those first two are probably the ones to focus on if you want to move forward with the borrowing. And then kind of what does that mean from a debt service standpoint, and then ultimately comparing it to bond issue. So if you flip to the next page, page 6. So in the green is for the facts and figures related to the M&T proposal. In the orange are the facts related to the Webster Bank proposal. And then in the blue is a bond issue so that we can compare it to. And where it says project fund deposit, again, ultimately, we just wanted to do apples to apples. But ultimately, if you decide to move forward, what we talked about before, assuming it meets your project needs, is the borrowing amount itself would be $5 million. And then the net amount you receive would be something less after you net out the issuance cost. But for these purposes, we did a net project on the $5 million because the two different, whether it's bank loan or bond issue, they have different costs associated with it, right? A bank loan is going to have less costs than a bond issue. Bond issue also has a lot more internal time too that folks have to spend on the transaction. So with the M&T proposal, you see down below in column 6, the debt service that's generated from that 3.78% interest rate. It should total payback of basically 6.46 million. With the Webster, it's 6.499, so just a little bit higher, about $40,000 more in total interest expense with the Webster proposal. And then you got the bond issue. The bond issue from a pure mathematical standpoint, based on today's rates, is producing a slightly better. It's not grossly better, but there are some advantages to it based on today's rates. But with the bond issue, though, it takes time to get that to market and prepare everything. And who knows what the world's going to look like a month from now. Rates could be better, or rates could be worse. So there's that market risk related to the bond issue. So that's kind of the one key thing. Even though when you look in column 10, the total, that is the lowest amount, and that's when you're factoring in total principal issued. Total principal issued will be more for a bond issue because it has more fees. But it does have a slightly lower interest rate, and it is a 5-year call feature, so it's not quite as good, but you have that interest rate risk. Like I said, with Webster Bank, that's a clean proposal, and they will hold that rate of a 3.88%, but it does have that prepayment allowed after October of 2027. So it's okay. It's just not fabulous from a prepayment standpoint. The M&T loan, again, when they submitted, they were all due back Monday afternoon. That was the indicative rate 3.78. Now, M&T, they do something a little bit different where we would be able to lock in that rate, say tomorrow. So attached in here are the first, the couple of good Webster proposal and M&T proposal. If you would be interested in moving forward with the M&T proposal, you could, even though we were very clear with the bank that the party does want to move forward, the official action is not going to occur until February, when you approve a borrowing resolution, the township meets, whether it's a special meeting at the same time or a regularly scheduled meeting in February to approve their guarantee order. All the official actions are not going to occur until February. But if you did want to move forward with the M&T proposal, we could do what's called a forward rate lock, where they could, as of tomorrow, they couldn't do it today, but as of tomorrow, say lunchtime, they could fix that rate. And it's probably going to be close to 3.7. It could be a little bit higher because the market has changed a little bit since Monday. Now, in some ways, that's good because if you do move forward, you have that rate locked, and it's the best prepayment feature. It's all pretty flexible. But if for some reason the transaction would not close, or you decide you don't want to do the deal anymore, we don't take the official actions in February, there will be a penalty to basically terminate that rate lock. And I think it changes on every deal, but basically what the banker quoted me today, say a couple $100 per day, sort of from the time that they would lock it in, let's just say till tomorrow. And we're expecting to close on this transaction sometime later in March. So if the authority and the township take their respective actions mid-February, it's about a month to close the transaction. So that takes us to like mid-March. So you'd have, whatever we want to call it, 45, 60, let's just, be conservative, 2 full months, 60 days at, say, a couple $100 a day that the authority would owe if you terminated, if you didn't move forward with the transaction and we terminated that rate lock. So we wanted to make sure you fully knew that if you did move forward with the MSP proposal, that possibility. Now, I don't foresee you not going forward with it, but it's just, you want to make sure you're aware of that issue. And when I talked to the banker from M&T this afternoon, again, he said, okay, if you send me back the signed proposal that's in here, they'll get that in their queue in the morning. And then if I need that actual rate lock agreement signed, which is just a 1-pager that they'll send over, and I'm sure we'll define to sign that, that then they can lock it in. And it's going to be somewhere close to, 3.8. If we get to tomorrow morning and, we send them all that information and he calls me up and say, it's not a 3 point, instead of a 3.78, or maybe if it even goes up to like a 3.85, if he calls me up and says it's, over 4%, we'll say no go, right? But if it's still around the same ballpark, we could move forward with it. So, again, nothing's ever squeaky clean anymore, but those are, I think, are the 3 best options: the M&T, the Webster, and the bond issue. Bond issue is producing the best results as of now, but again, that the cost and the time to do it, I'm just not sure we want to go down that route. I think sticking with the M&T or the Webster proposals would be perfectly fine, but love to hear your thoughts on that. Overall, we were pleased with, number one, the amount of bids that we got. That was great. I think the size of the loan, $5 million. I think the structure of the loan being not very long was attractive to the banks. And obviously, you got a good name, right? You got a good credit rating with the township and the authority. So this was a good loan for the banks to bid on. But we were pleased with the results. The rates, obviously, they're higher than what we've experienced in years past, but we're not at those levels anymore. We're at kind of more historical averages. But all things considered, I think the proposals are good.
Scott, if the rates go down in a year or 2 years down the road and we can take advantage of that, there's nothing in the.
If you go with the M&T proposal, that is prepayable at any time. So yeah, if rates go down a year from now and you can save a couple $100,000 by refinancing it, absolutely will bring it to your attention. Yes. Now with the Webster proposal and the bond issue, because tax laws have changed and everything else over the years, we'd actually have to wait until the 4-year or 5-year anniversary to refinance. But with M&T, you can do it 6 months from now, a year from now, 3 years from now. It's more flexible.
I don't see $100 penalty per day. I mean, we need money, so we're gonna keep trucking with whichever direction we head. I'd say so. That's not an issue. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing the M&T Bank loan is the best for our situation right now. It would change a lot between now and we go to lock it in tomorrow. Yes, then it changes that, but.
Yeah, and I'll be in touch with Hutch. Like if you want to decide to move forward, I send everything over. He calls up and says, here's what it is, and we don't like it. Okay, we're just not gonna sign it. We're not gonna move forward with it. But that kind of thing. We have that ability to do that.
Do you have any questions? Right.
Fred, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have a problem with the M&T proposal. I'm not quite hearing you clear on the amount of time it takes to lock this in. Is that because you have to take it in front of the Board of Supervisors and back to this and so forth? Is that what makes it so long?
Well, we with this rate lock agreement, we could lock it in tomorrow.
Oh, so you can lock in the 378 tomorrow, and then you have how many days until you pull the money?
So just a couple things, make sure you heard everything. So if we lock in tomorrow, there's probably a good chance it's not gonna be exactly 3.78. It's gonna be a little bit higher, a little bit lower, just because the market's moved a little bit since Monday, right? All things, it's gonna be about the same. So then as long as we close on the transaction, I can't remember exactly what we had in the RFP, but we put a estimated closing date. Let's just say it was March 15th. And if we close on March 15th, everything's fine. The rate holds. You know, we get the authority official approval in February, we get the township official approval in February, everything filed with the state, we close on March 15th, everything's good. If for some reason we don't close on March 15th and it goes to April 1, so that means we would have to terminate that rate lock agreement because we didn't close within the time period that the bank requested, and then the authority may owe that termination payment. You could enter into a new rate lock agreement if you wanted to, or you could just kind of let it ride, but that's basically that risk with either you decide you don't want to do financing at all after you sign that rate lock agreement, then you would owe a penalty, you know, up until that per diem, until basically that March 15th date, or for whatever reason, we have a horrible snowstorm on the day that you're supposed to meet, and we can't meet, and you have to kick it to March. You know, there's always weird things that could happen like that could delay it. So I don't want to scare you with that prepayment penalty or that payment penalty, but
That doesn't sound like much of an issue to me. I mean, it's gonna take a thing before that's gonna happen. I think you have to remember the whole root of this loan is to basically get us a few more years down to the road. And maybe we have some other more capital projects, but rates will hopefully be coming back down. And even as your chart shows, you know, by 2 years out, then you could look at a bond financing. So it's basically short-term money. And if you can get it for a $2,500 fee, that's a good deal.
Yep.
So,
And I think also to be clear, I think the way this one's structured, I just want to make sure I'm not getting my different one mixed up. You would receive the money at closing, which I think in this case is good because if the rate is somewhere around the 3.8%, a lot of the investment vehicles out there are north of that. And so there is a potential for arbitrage, and that's also why we're keeping this loan amount of 5 million and under, because it allows you to keep that arbitrage. So again, there's it's not huge.
You could get 90-day treasuries right now for 4.3. So
Yeah, it's a different world.
as long as you can swap it.
Yeah, so there'll be a little bit of an advantage with that too.
So the rate, we'll know the rate till tomorrow for sure.
Right.
What rate would we say to give the okay to go ahead that it doesn't exceed? The Webster Bank rate,
I
or
think that'd be a good price. I think that'd be a good bogey.
I would make a motion that we give Scott go ahead to give M&T Bank the go ahead as long as the rate tomorrow does not exceed 3.885%.
got a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So
Okay,
moved.
sounds good. So then, if it's okay for tomorrow, Hutch, if you want, I can send you like a clean version of the proposal. The M&T proposal is in this packet. If you want to just take that and sign it and send it back to me, that's perfectly fine. Or I can send you a new version in the morning. You can sign and send it back, and then they'll follow up with their forward rate lock agreement too, which again is like a 1-pager that you'll need to sign, so we can get all that stuff squared away.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, sounds good. And again, if the rate comes in higher than that, I'll report to Hutch and we'll come up with a plan B and go from there, but we're moving forward with that. That's a good idea.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, thank you. Good.
Run upgrade.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good rest of your afternoon.
South Harlem Pump Station Improvement Project. As was reported previously, there's been minor work that's been occurring there. As some components have come in that the contractor can install currently, primarily some thin steel piping and done that. They've also installed some lighting. That's about the only thing that can occur at this point on that, until the electrical gear comes in. Currently in May, it's scheduled for. So, the general contractor has been receiving other equipment, so they've been receiving pumps and associated valves and fittings and such, and they've been storing them at their yard. So I would anticipate next month you'll probably see an application for payment from the general contractor for this wood materials. Now that they're right here.
Cedar Acres inflow removal.
We were at a partners meeting yesterday morning, and the city indicated that the contractor was expected to start work next week.
There was some design of a new inlet due to some existing utilities in the area, so that was a holdup. But yeah, as I said, it's supposed to start next week.
Okay. PennDOT project.
So the State Route 30 resurfacing project, PennDOT's contract, PennDOT's consultant got back to us. You had previously submitted a resolution to them for cost sharing for the manhole raising that was to be associated with that project. Because the authority's cost, share of that cost was less than $20,000. They would like to void the previous resolution and request and obtain a new resolution with an abbreviated incorporated work request for the authority. And
We did that.
did that? Oh, okay. All right, so that's been done. Okay. So the resolutions on when were submitted.
We were provided to
Last-
Caleb.
okay,
Sorry, I lost his name in my head for a minute. Caleb.
Should have loaded it.
Is that on the PennDOT project?
Yes, I still, the only other thing is on the culvert replacement project down by Kings Acres on 30. No, want to work with Solicitor Cream on those just to make sure we get have them agree. Minor easements that are needed. So we follow.
Any other old business under sanitary sewer? Business under stormwater? Anything? No, good. Okay, new business. First of all, we have a guest here, Brandon Humble. He'd like to bring to our attention some issues.
Yeah, thanks for hearing me for a few minutes here. I'm here on behalf of the owners at 175 Strasburg Pike as well as 9150 Road. Both of these jobs we've been contacted with. One we are contracted with also to repair an inadequate septic system. Both properties have sewage coming out of the ground. The one that I'm here more on behalf of is the 175 Strasburg Pike. In October, we put additional holding tanks in to try to keep DEP, off of the homeowners back there. We're just wondering, and from talking to you just briefly, if there's ever been any discussion about putting that an extension to that sewer line that is already just north on Strasburg Pike. We did just a little bit of preliminary investigation there, and I apologize, I came right from a job site, so I wasn't able to bring some of the notes that I had in the office, but we had seen that it's approximately 1,100 feet to the closest manhole, which is on Strasburg Pike, just north or west, whichever direction of this particular property. And are wondering if there is, any discussion or talk about anything in the future with extending that existing line. And we are just wondering about that because we're, the next steps, we've already met with Marv Stoner, the sewage enforcement officer for on-site systems, and he has ruled out anything with the exception of a drip system, which I've been involved in many, hiring soil scientists to put something on the property. We're not sure that's even an option because of the close proximity to the creek, as well as some other easement issues there. I have already been involved in stream water discharge systems, but we know that that's not an overnight process through DEP. We did have another option back in the Flory Park near your restrooms. There is a tie-in point there, but that would also involve a stream water crossing, working with DEP with that. So we feel like our hands are tied a little bit, and obviously the homeowner doesn't want to keep paying for pumping holding tanks every 3 weeks like they have been since October. So I'm just wondering, has there ever been any discussion? And if there isn't, I guess part B of the question is, we did get some preliminary numbers for some directional boring, just kind of to put together a snapshot for the customer of what they would be looking at. And for that distance, as well as what I know is required for your township with grinder pumps and everything, I mean, we're looking at not less than 60,000 for doing that work privately. Whether that's even an option, I know you'd have, because that's a PennDOT road, I think we'd probably have some easement issues there to work through with them, right-of-way issues. So before we went that direction, I just thought it would be worthwhile coming to a meeting and discussing it and see if there's been any discussion of extending that. I do know of, we know of at least two other customers, not customers, two other residents between this particular property and the last manhole that are also experiencing issues. So I don't think it's an isolated event. If I'm correct, there's 13 properties on the east side between this particular property and where the mill stream crosses Strasburg Pike, and approximately 15 properties on the west side of this, in that same distance also. So, we're talking, upwards towards 30 properties there that could benefit from a future expansion. Just wondering what the authorities' thoughts are, and if that's even an option for something in the future before we go and spend a lot of this residents' money on something on site that may have means for public tie-in in the years to come.
Yeah, it's something we looked into, but that's a number of years ago now, that Strasburg Pike situation. I mean, you guys probably remember better than I do.
I think you and I have had this.
I think we talked back about the time that I put those tanks in for them, and at that point, we just didn't really know which direction we were gonna go.
That's why I suggest you talk to some of the neighbors, see how their systems were doing, and maybe approach the board, if they'd be willing to look deeper into a project. I know to go gravity, that's already deep going up over the hill and it drops off towards this property, so it almost have to be a low pressure line. And it's solid rock.
And that's one of our noting factors with this property specifically. There's a couple rocky outcroppings that are coming out of the ground. So we knew even before we did perk testing that was going to be probably a limiting factor there, as well as, the close proximity to the creek also kind of ties our hands with much on site there.
I can't remember how deep that last manhole was that was set on Strasburg Pike. Can't remember on the top of my head. But
I think the general intent of it was the depth of it was driven to go as far as it was possible. Strasburg Pike. If you had to go beyond that, then you're probably looking at low pressure and gravity.
Yeah, I don't know if anything's been designed preliminary beyond that last manhole, because the board jumped in on the project when the bridge was being replaced. While the road was closed, they thought that was a good time to get that up through there.
How many total houses did you say it is between I would call it the north side and the south side?
There's 15 properties on the west side, okay, well, whichever direction it runs on the.
Well, I would say Strasburg Pike would run basically north and south.
South.
I mean,
on
it kind of would be a little bit,
a
yeah.
little bit west. On the west side of Strasburg Pike, between this particular property and where the mill stream crosses, which is near that manhole, there's 15 properties. On the east side of Strasburg Pike, there's 13, so
28.
28 total. But in reference to where that last manhole is, that was in my other notes. I'm not sure if there are any of the houses that would be on the south side of where the mill stream crosses that are hooked to your system currently or not. Or does that line stop above the creek or north of the creek?
And I don't know.
That line comes across that Flory Park, and then it comes through the old mill shop, through their parking lot, and then catches the houses on Strasburg Pike. None of the houses cross Mill Creek. We had to get an easement through
John
the old mill
Lowndes.
shop's parking lot. So the main line actually runs on this side, but it's only 2 manholes, but it runs right out to Strasburg Pike Gravity and then south on Strasburg Pike.
So, yeah, obviously, I know this isn't a decision you can make today, but I just wanted to at least bring it to your attention. that
Right.
know
I
that
mean,
there's-
I guess I'm not sure what the next step is there in the sense of, getting a survey out there to other residents or.
Well, I would suggest that a private project could happen most quickly. So if this property owner and or a group of property owners wanted to try to extend the authority's system themselves, getting PennDOT approvals, getting the design work done, getting PennDOT approvals, getting the design reviewed and everything, that's going to happen more quickly than an authority run project. Cost would be different. Obviously, the authority does it. The authority is going to assess the properties that are benefited by the project. You'd have to figure out what the level of assessment for each property is and how those costs are shared. But if speed is the priority at this point, private project is going to move more quickly.
Would, if it was a private project extended along Strasburg Pike, would the facilities remain private or would they be dedicated to the authority? And if they're dedicated or offered for dedication, how does that impact any mandatory connection ordinances with the other residents that they go past?
We had if I just speak to that question, we had a similar situation in another township where it was a privately installed forced sewer main. That particular sewer authority did take over that line once it was installed, but they also had an agreement because the owner of the property footed the bill. Now, it wasn't nearly as many properties, I think there was 4. But when the additional adjoining landowners hooked in, the owner got reimbursed for some of the upfront cost in that case. I don't know how an agreement like that works, but I know that we put the line in, the particular property affected paid the bill, and then as those others needed to tie in, there was an agreement that they each shared a portion of that install cost. Almost like a tapping fee that they would have paid to the person that put it in, even though the authority did take ownership of it.
Yeah, I think the facility in Strasburg Pike would have to be a township facility ultimately, because PennDOT's not going to allow you to have a private facility in their highway. The authority would likely have to be the applicant and would take dedication of it. In terms of an extenders agreement, it's been a long time since I've been familiar with them, but I think there were some recent either court cases or legislation that we have to look at to see if extenders agreements are permitted, and if so, how. But I have heard of them in the past. What I'm calling an extenders agreement, you know, the private individual extends, and then as others connect, there are reimbursements. And Matt's other question, the township does have ordinance on the book that indicates that if your dwelling building is within 150 feet of a sewer main, you must connect to it. So that is an ordinance that's in place right now. I don't know if I think some of these homes are set back quite a distance from Strasburg Pike, so I don't know how the 150 feet works for each of them, but that's what it's right now.
I think the bulk of them, from a little bit of research we did, would be within that 150 feet. There definitely would be a few that do sit back a little further, but it would be, most of them would be within 150 feet of the roadway or where the right of way would be.
So if the line was extended, they would have to hook up then. So they would have to share in the cost. Well, I don't know, it depends on if it's a private deal, yeah.
I mean, we still have our connection fee that would apply as well.
What is a tap-in fee nowadays?
$2,650.
And that's completely separate from, I mean, that wouldn't be anything to do with a private service that others would be allowed to tie into. Would there be an additional fee that this particular owner would get some of that install cost reimbursed on top of your tapping fee?
Again, we'd have to look at how the extenders agreements work, but if you do an extenders agreement, then that would be where that would be possible.
Charlie, you may mention, you might know of at least one other property there out of these 28 are having some issues, or?
Yes, there's two others that we know this particular owner has talked to. One is a neighbor a few houses up, and the other one might be 6 or 8 houses up. That, I mean, it's the same scenario. They're backed right up against the creek there. No opportunity for any additional on-site system to work there. Probably both have an existing cesspool like this place did that just doesn't work anymore. So yeah, very limited options in terms of anything on-site. And from the best knowledge that I have, I mean, it looks like this property and the adjoining, I would say 5 to 6 properties on the same side of the road are all very similar properties. Very shallow backyards to the stream bank there before you get up to the, once you get up about 6 properties away, then it does widen and some of the properties have more backyard. Now it's still floodplain, so it doesn't necessarily mean that they have any further option for on-site when their system decides to stop working, but they do have more property. So I think it would be a very beneficial area to have something extended in there, because I have a feeling it's not if they fail, it's when, and when the rest of them do, then they're all kind of in the same boat.
My recollection is that when we investigated this back when the bridge project was being contemplated, that we did do some investigation after at least at that time, they weren't having problems. So this is a change in the condition out there.
Well, I think we knew of some issues, if I remember correctly, some of the people, but I'm not exactly sure what stopped the a possible extension project. But I remember of hearing, sewage issues right in that area.
I think we stopped our project it's been what, since 2008? I think we wanted to stay in PennDOT's limits of work because we couldn't exceed outside their limits. I guess it was a manhole towards the end of the project, which, like I said, it's 2008. Can't remember sometime what happened last week.
So direction for him, I mean, what do we decide here? What do we look into? I mean, to me, like Hutch said, the private system is going to be the quickest compared, but, it obviously sounds to me like it's a project us as a sewer authority should be looking into if
Or at least be involved with the.
well, I mean, even that, that private issue thing, I mean, obviously lawyers get involved and everything else. I mean, okay, you have to write something up. Well, your customer pays that extended or whatever. And now you have a number of customers that I should say customers, neighbors that want to hook up to it. I know if I was the one that paid for the extension, I'd want to get reimbursed.
And we can really look into that part of the question. So, how extenders agreement would work, if it's an option.
Yeah, I mean, that to me is, something that, again, I'm not sure the urgency from your customer standpoint.
Well, of course, they would like to have it remedied yesterday so that they don't have the pumping fees I think there's 4 tanks there now currently since we added 2 to the existing, and they can go approximately 3 weeks, on that. So, they're getting stuck with probably $500 every 3 weeks to have all 4 of those. It's about 4,500 gallons. So, if it's a substantial.
I mean, even to me, the best case scenario, is going through the sewer authority. Anyhow, it's months away before anything will be done.
That's why I said it's not an overnight decision.
I mean, you got engineering, you got.
And
Yeah.
Yeah. Happens fast.
Definitely something I think that, should be tried to be remedied, but.
Would it be fair to say if you can look into the, extenders agreement, that would maybe point us in the right direction if or which way we would even go with that, whether it has to be all private with a separate agreement or whether the sewer authority would recognize that there's a lot of need for that and maybe look into what it would take to actually extend it. I think that the customer, like if they knew that would happen in a year or 2 years, I'm not sure what they do in the meantime. I think they would be okay to keep pumping it rather than put in a $30,000 drip system on the property if they knew that it was a potential even in the future. As far as them moving forward, I mean, we talked preliminary numbers and they weren't opposed to doing a private line. So it would be a possibility. And if it's a benefit somehow to the sewer authority too, to have them actually put some of that bill, I do think that they're going to want reimbursed, or if you have 10 neighbors that decide to hook up to it, I'm sure they would want a portion of that back if possible. But it sounds like the first step would be to just see what that extenders agreement would even be able to produce on the sewer authority end. And then we could make a decision whether to look to the private line.
I think if you were to run and extend along Strasburg Pike in the road there, and that became an authority facility, every house between them and the connection point that's within 150 feet. So I don't know if it's all 28, but maybe it's 25. I'm not sure. It depends how far they sit back. I think if it was more just an individual project on their end, maybe it's more how realistic it would be to direction the drill underneath the stream behind that and tie into the interceptor. And you're dealing with DEP for stream crossing, but you're not dealing with any of the neighbors addressing their situation that they have individually at this time.
And that, yes, that was certainly our second best option. I think that when we first discussed that, like you said, with the DEP stream crossing, that's out of the question to go that route. But I think that they thought, hey, if we ran it down the road and had some option for an agreement to be able to collect some fees from anyone else who would need it, they identified two right away that probably would look into it and maybe share some of that cost compared to just going out, across the stream. I mean, maybe there's still option to tie 2 or 3 houses together with some additional directional support. They thought at least it would give the opportunity for anyone else along there to use it in the future.
But I think because of the township and we're connected, it is run along the road. I think 150 not to be required to.
That would be after the sewer authority would take over. I mean, that would have to be correct, like it would be installed and then dedicated to the sewer authority. And then
So
at that point,
And probably while that line is being installed, in front of each of those homes there, a T and the associated valve will drop. So the cost, at least initially, is probably going to be greater because your directional driller is probably saying, hey, I can go a few hundred feet or 500 feet.
500 max, right?
But now you're probably looking at in front of every property, having a pit.
5 feet or 100, right?
Yeah.
You extend it outside PennDOT right away, that way you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
What would happen if they got the extenders agreement and then that property owner who paid the bill now sold his property? So now anybody else that would connect, who would be has the right to that extenders agreement payment?
That's for the lawyers to figure out. Yes, I don't know.
Okay.
Well, there would be a couple property owners to deal with, even with the direction for over to the other side of the creek. The stream that is owned. The park. Yes. You're dealing with
You're saying there's other privately owned property there? I thought that the park, does the park not come to the stream bank?
It does, but the easement for the authority's facility doesn't come to the stream. And the bed of the stream itself is owned by the mill owner.
Where that's,
Whole history there.
Yeah.
Because that way nobody can put a mill in just level.
I see. Okay, well, that does change things then. I thought it was kind of a easy shot across there. It's a little longer, but it's,
I mean, I don't know that the township would be a problem. I don't know that Mr. Landis would be a problem either, but you still have to deal with them as property owners. But we can come back to the authority next month with information about an extenders agreement. We may even ask Matt to help us a little bit with some, conceptual design, basic stuff to get a better feel that we can give that information to the authority. Hopefully be in a better position to start to make decisions in response to this request.
Be available next month?
oh, there's a good possibility, yeah. I mean, if you knew that you were gonna gather some info, and if there was any other homework or investigation that we needed to do, I mean, you can let me know what that would be.
Jeff Court.
I don't have one with me, I left the wallet in the truck, but I can write down.
Did you sign in?
I did not, I gave him some info.
I have his information.
An email address or?
No, just his name. So if you want to get his phone number, that would be good.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time, at least hearing us out. And, yeah, if there's, yeah, anything else that we need to do ahead of time,
Yeah,
please
if I
let
find
us
out, I'll
know.
contact you.
But yeah, thank you for letting us bring that concern to you anyway.
What was that Pitney Road address?
91.
91.
But it's either 71 or 90. Drawing a blank. 71, yeah. And that particular, I mean, we don't have to go through that whole thing because it's a very similar situation to here. There's nothing on the roadway that I have found right in front. And I know that the properties across Pitney Road are like where Lancaster Electric is. They have an on-site system and another property does also. This particular property, I don't think has an option. There's one little spot in the backyard, but it would all depend on a perk.
I think you and I discussed this one too. The closest manhole's up by Dart,
Yes, it's up that way.
so it's all uphill too.
It would be a very similar situation again. It's right near where Hickory Drive comes out there on. So we were trying to, I don't need to go through that whole thing, but it's a similar situation and trying to figure out what to do.
And not again.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thank you. Well, appreciate your input.
Under sanitary sewer, under new business partners meeting update.
Mentioned earlier, we had a regular quarterly meeting with the partners yesterday. Gave us some updates on the various projects that they're doing. Did we make copies for the authority members? The project.
I think there's,
It's not included in my.
we did not.
We'll get that to you, just so you can have a look at the projects. that are there.
I think the Honolulu Garden, for the interceptor, we're gonna have a meeting with the city and SLAC to discuss that.
You're done.
Sounds like there's there are other issues that we want to bring up as far as treehouse. It sounds like they need to do that.
Yeah, we're gonna have, as Matt indicated, we're gonna have some more discussion. I think I reported last month about the discussions related to the interceptor work, the metering analysis of flows, as well as the condition assessment that they want to do. And although that's sort of the motivation for getting together, I think we're going to talk about some other things related to metering in general, metering Cedar Acres, for example, and other issues in that. So hasn't been scheduled yet, but if it happens before your next meeting.
A small water sewer programs application.
So the CFA application was made for the COVID-19 ARPA H2O funding that was submitted in December 2021. I'm sorry, December last one, 2022. And an initial review by CFA staff of the documents submitted. We asked that we submit a revised FFATA form. Now that the authority has a UEI number. And then that information will be filed by the authority. We get that document. Drafted and get down.
Fantastic.
Yes. I recommend.
I don't see how you guys do it. I'm telling you, I don't. It drives me nuts. Okay, new business under, oh, is there any other new business under sanitary?
The water quality management permit for Greenfield North has been received. So that was one of the outstanding items before construction could proceed.
if you've been over that way at all, they've been drilling along Pitney Road to basically clear the way for the excavation work to put in that lines to serve Greenfield North, which is the apartment complex along Greenfield Road up towards Woodland Road.
It's too close to the rock to drill and blast it, or too close to the existing sanitary, so they're just basically making Swiss cheese out of the rock, so they're hoping they can dig through it without any blasting. So they're just drilling holes everywhere.
New business under stormwater, update on the M&T.
The hack project is under review by PADP. The Oscars Pet Resort project is a illustration, and that's in design right now. And we are in the process of working with DEP on a revised PR.
Love these initials.
The acronyms used.
Any other new business under stormwater? Saxton and Stump, lawyers consultant.
That's your item number 8B.
Oh, I'm sorry. You did the appointment of auditing firm, right? To authorize transfer of files for bond counsel.
Rhonda Lord's been your bond counsel. Her firm, which was Cagle, Kellen, somebody on board, was acquired by this other firm. In order to transfer the file from the old firm to the new firm, they need their client's approval of doing that. The Board of Supervisors has taken that action, again, for Rhonda having been bond counsel. So they're asking that the authority take the same action so that they can move the file from Rhonda's former firm to her new firm.
Make a motion, they allow them to move the files.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add one item to the agenda. There's an agreement before you for the Stoidler property at 2599 Old Philadelphia Pike. That's a stormwater agreement indemnification. So when the project came through, there were improvements to the stormwater system along Old Philadelphia Pike. In the past, those would have just been approved by the township. Now that we have the authority as the owner of the stormwater facilities, it needs to be signed by both the township and the authority. This indemnifies the township and the authority from needing to maintain these facilities and puts that onus on the developer.
Affect that onus. So do we need a motion to approve this?
Please.
I'll make a motion, we approve that. But you already signed it. I'll make a motion, we approve the amendment for Mr. Studler's property at 2000, that address,
2599.
2590.
I'll second the motion.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say
Aye.
so moved. Anything else?
There's been no public comment during, besides Mr. Umbel.
Motion to adjourn. Oh,
If I can just very briefly mention one thing, there was a recent Commonwealth Court case decided having to do with stormwater fees that isn't a great decision. It doesn't really apply to us at this point in time, but we're monitoring it and we're going to keep an eye on it to see if there's anything that comes from it that would require the township and the authority to do anything. So I just wanted to alert you to that.
Where was that decision?
Westchester Borough involved the borough, Westchester Borough and Westchester University.
Now motion to adjourn.
Bye, Fred.